Right, please stand for a moment of silence. And in honor of June 6th and the 80th anniversary of D-Day, I invite everyone to join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Crystal, if you would conduct a roll call. Oh, and let me go ahead and show everyone that Rick Reed is present via video.
Ron Bacon.
Here.
My picture keeps
Rob Dimmitt.
Here.
Ted Metzger.
Present.
Brad Overton.
here.
Richard Reed.
Present.
Greg Richmond.
Here.
Chris Wetstein.
Here.
And just a reminder, all of the items tonight will have to be by a roll call vote for approval of items. And just a little bit earlier, when I mentioned the June 6th and the 80th anniversary of D-Day, there's a lot of things that have went on in the last month and this month in regards to historical items. And honestly, I could spend 20 minutes talking about all of them. I may have to move you a little further back, Rick. I think you're interfering here. Yeah, there we go. But I would just specifically like to just call out, and hopefully all of us continue to remember the historical event that occurred 80 plus years ago, and we still are honored by some of those veterans that have appeared in Normandy. Actually, it's 12 o'clock, a little after 12 over there now, and just to remember the sacrifice. And I'm a student of history, and I can still just remember reading books and thinking about those men and what they went through, and all the support staff and everything that they provided. And it's just such a tremendous honor for what those men did. And if I don't stop now, I will get a little choked up. But I just wanted to take the time to honor them and to think about them and the sacrifices that they made. So,
Amen.
all right. Let's move on to our first item on the agenda tonight, and that is the approval of minutes from the regular meeting of May 2nd, 2024. Looking for a motion.
Motion.
Motion of approval by Greg on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any items for discussion in regards to the minutes? All right, if not, we'll go ahead and take our roll call vote, please.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Aye.
Brad Overton.
Aye.
Richard Reed.
Aye.
Greg Richmond.
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
Okay, and the minutes are approved 7-0. All right, the next item on the agenda is Ascension St. Vincent EMS update. And,
Well, he asked to be on the agenda, but he's not here.
oh, yeah, I was gonna say, I don't see.
I did send you the report, though.
Okay, well, we'll move on and maybe we'll catch up with him at the next meeting.
He did send out a printout.
He did, yeah. All right, next item on the agenda is Circuit Court Business, additional appropriations, per diem petit jury, $15,000.
Evening.
Evening, how are you?
Doing great, thank you. Judge Granger, Circuit Court, and I've already used up what you allotted me for the year. So I'm coming to ask for more juror pay. Juror trials continue to be multiple. And I will tell you that in October, I have a 3-week murder trial, so that's really gonna take a substantial amount of money that I'm gonna have to come back for.
Okay, well, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's any way to avoid, well, I mean, there is a way to avoid things, people not do things that require trials, but unfortunately, that's not the case.
Motion.
Is there a second on the floor? We have a motion by Greg and a second by Ted. Any discussion?
And that's to prove. I should say that, shouldn't I?
Oh, that's true. I was taking that as an assumption. Probably shouldn't do that. All right, seeing no discussion, I'll call for a vote, please.
Ron Bacon,
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt,
Aye.
Ted Metzger,
Aye.
Brad Overton,
Yes.
Richard Reed,
Yes.
Greg Richmond,
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Judge. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Good seeing you all.
Yep, good seeing you. All right, and the next item on the agenda is an additional appropriation, stormwater, workers' compensation, $6,627. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of that? We did have that claim for our review, and there is, appears to be plenty of funds for that, so looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve by Rob. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Ron to approve. Any discussion? All right, seeing no, no discussion, oh boy. Calling for a roll call vote, please.
Ron Bacon,
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt,
Aye.
Ted Metzger,
Aye.
Brad Overton,
Yes.
Richard Reed,
Yes.
Greg Richmond,
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries 7-0. And if I didn't mention, the motion carried 7-0 for the circuit court approval as well. I think I may have forgotten that. All right, the next item on the agenda is additional appropriation, ARPA audit, and $56,000 and contractual services grant. Let's see.
Good evening, Debbie Bennett Steersman, and the commissioners asked that I make those two appropriations. And the reason is, this is the last year for ARPA funds to be obligated. Spending can go on until 2026, provided that we have a contract signed, written proposal, or written purchase order. The only things that can be carried into 25 and 26 are soft costs that they don't have to be under contract, but you have to account for the money by the end of this year. So, does everybody understand that? Okay. So Treasury defines obligation as an order placed for property and services or entering into contracts, subawards, or similar transactions that require payment. One revision, One revision to the definition of obligation under obligation IFR. The definition of obligation is unchanged, but a recipient is also considered to incur an obligation by December 31st, 2024, when recipients incur costs related to legal, administrative, and auditing. Those are the only three exceptions that can be carried into those 2 years. So we're asking for an appropriation for audit, federal audits. State Board has not given us a direct number, but we have to get something that's pretty close. So that'll be for 24, 25, and 26. And the other is for administration for 2 years. And that's from interest. It's not from ARPA funds.
All right, looking for a motion before we open it up for discussion.
I move to approve.
There's a motion on the floor by Greg to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Ron. All right, any discussion of these two items?
I have a question.
Sure.
Of the three things that we need to carry this over, what do we have?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean.
One of the three conditions for carrying this over was to have a signed contract, a signed purchase order.
You do not have to have a signed, everything that's being spent out of ARP ARP. That is, construction, buying, whatever you're doing with the funding, has to be under either a signed purchase order, a signed contract, or a signed proposal by the end of this year in order to spend it in '25 and '26. With the exception of infrastructure projects. They only get one additional year. Right now, we have no infrastructure projects. So the only things that so at the end of this year, I have to put everything in the report that's obligated, that has a contract. If there's something that doesn't have a contract and there's money left, the Treasury's going to take it back next year. The only things you don't have to have a contract for are administration, audit, and legal fees. I'm just asking these be taken out of the interest to carry them over. It's not out of the ARPA fund.
And the contractual services is the legal funds?
No, which, I
The
don't have it in front of me.
150,000,
That is $75,000 a year for 2 years for administration.
thank you.
Okay. And if you want to know, right now, we have $261,000, I think $719 in interest.
That helps.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, it's $150,000. How many years is that for?
How many years is
2.
that? 2 years.
That was Rick Reed, and he asked how many years was the $150,000 for, and Debbie replied that that was for 2 years, just in case someone didn't hear that for the records.
How many years will you normally sign on contracts? 1 year?
Typically, yes, it's a rollover unless the amount of money changes, is what I understand.
Crystal, would you
I
just,
don't know why we go beyond 1 year, because that's what we always sign is 1-year contracts.
Okay, so he said, how many years do we typically carry a contract? And then he said, I don't know why we'd go over 1 year, because that is not what we normally do.
okay.
I don't think, I'm not asking for a contract to be signed. I'm just asking for the set aside.
Not asking for a contract, but it says contractual services grant.
Almost all of the money in ARP is contractual services. We put it all in contractual services. This is just the interest that hasn't been obligated.
So why are we exceeding 1 year?
I can't hear you.
Why are you exceeding 1 year?
Because the closeout of the ARPA funds is not till the year 2026. That's when the final audit with the U.S. Treasury and all reports have to be turned in. So that'd be 25 and 26.
So the audit is for the
State Board of Accounts.
State Board of Accounts, and then the $150,000, can you just run through that again, just,
Is for administration, $75,000 each year to continue administering the ARPA funds.
okay, so
They're not going to go away just because this is the last year to obligate. There's a lot that aren't going to be completed at the end of this year. And then we have to go all the way through closeout. You have to do reporting all the way to the end of 2026.
So this is being set aside for
Yes, it's not
contracts.
going to any, it's just putting it into contracts for administration.
And it sounds like this is our opportunity to do so, that we can't wait till after '24 and then set it
No,
aside.
then we don't, then they take everything back.
So we can't do 1 year and then
Right,
wait and
right,
do another year
right.
later. We need to-
Exactly.
So it's an opportunity to do 2 years.
Yes,
But
and
you're-
an opportunity to do
moment.
3 years of federal audits. And again, we didn't want to go too high, because if we go too high and it doesn't come in that, the treasury will take back whatever's not spent. And we didn't want to go too low, so we based it upon what last year's federal audit cost, and we went upwards each year.
Gotcha.
So the ARPA, if they take the money back in '26, they're not gonna take the interest back too,
They
right?
can,
They
it's in the
can't.
fund. I have to report on it every time.
It's possible. Okay.
Yeah, I would say they can do everything. Treasury can
Pretty
pretty much.
much. I
I
understand
know, I
that.
don't want to sit here and say they're not, because they can.
Right, but there's no indication they're going to.
Yeah, we report quarterly on what is spent during that quarter online to Treasury. And so they take that report, and that's what the state board uses to test that year as well. I've already been through that twice.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's nothing that's obligating the 150 to be
No.
spent in
No,
2 years?
it's
That
not
could be-
obligated to anybody.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Yeah, you got a question from the audience? Go ahead.
So,
Could you please announce your
Oh,
name,
yep,
or
sure.
state your name, please?
Debbie Stevens, Warrick County resident. I'm kind of curious about, like, the ARPA, the audit portion of it, when there's no invoice and there's no goods or services rendered, then how do you commit that? How do you commit that
We're
money
setting it
or
aside.
appropriate it?
We're setting it aside for audits. We're not saying that's what's, if we don't set it aside this year, we can't set it aside in 25 and 26. When the audits come and the bill comes, I guess they'll just go back to council and ask for more money.
Okay, my understanding about ARPA when I was in the auditor's office was that 2024 was the last year to contractually obligate the funds. They could be spent in 25 and 26. Are you saying that that's not?
That's true, we're not
okay.
contracting this.
But if you don't have a contract, how can you contractually obligate it?
You have to estimate the audit fee. Here's the whole regulation that I just went to recently for
I
closeout.
did look through the
Yes, and
final
it's-
rule,
This is
right?
not the final rule. This was the obligation interim
Okay.
rule webinar on the closing of it. I've been to 3,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. I guess, just what is the law around that, and can you know, does it apply to county?
The law around it, what do you mean?
Around.
The treasury
using-
law is the same for everybody. Doesn't matter if you're county, town,
Or
entitlement, tribal, nation, anything, it's all gonna end. Everything, the obligation is very clearly stated what they consider obligation. Signed contract, signed proposal, or signed purchase order. That has to be in place by December 31st of this year in order to spend it in the next 2 years. If you don't have all that obligated in treasury report at the end of the year, whatever you have left, they're taking back. The exception to that is set-asides for attorney fees, audits, and administration and closeout. Did I
Okay,
explain it?
sure.
Okay.
And here you're saying contractual services is for administration. What is that, 150,000?
That's the fee to pay somebody to administer the grant all the way through the end.
So $75,000 a year?
Correct.
Okay,
No benefits, no taxes out.
okay. That
That's
seems
what
like,
it's been the last 2 years.
okay. That's for you to vote.
Yeah, if somebody else wants to do it, by all means, try it, believe me.
Oh, I do want to make one last comment. Compliance to contracts and grants, that really falls under the duties of the auditor. That's governance, that's how that works.
Well,
So-
that's gonna change. It did last council commissioner meeting.
Okay. Any additional comments? All right, let's go ahead and we'll take that roll call vote at this time.
Ron Bacon,
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt,
Aye.
Ted Metzger,
Nay.
Brad Overton,
Yes?
Richard Reed,
No,
Greg Richmond,
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
The motion carries 5-2. The two that voted no were Ted Metzger and Richard Reed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening. All right. The next item on the agenda is additional appropriations, contractual services correctional facility, $514,119.
Good evening, Heather Soberg, County Administrator. As we are slowly but surely working our way towards having the bond in place for the new security center, we're still incurring bills, and that's what this is for. We have a Garmong invoice for a month of the work that's been done that we need to cover with that I'm holding and waiting for this appropriation. When that happens, when the bond is finally put into place, we learned today that we will be able to replenish the fund with the bond proceeds. So this is just a temporary Band-Aid until that's put in place, which the goal is July 1 for that bond. Yeah, no, sorry, July 1 for
If you
that
said
bond to be put in
January,
place.
I'm just leaving.
Yeah, so, but that's what that's for.
Okay. Looking for a motion before we open it up for discussion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ron to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Rob. Now, any additional discussion for this item? Not hearing any additional discussion, I will make a motion for, or make a call for a roll call vote, please.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Aye.
Brad Overton.
Yes.
Richard Reed. Greg Richmond.
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thanks, Heather.
I'm just gonna stay a while.
Okay, so we won't announce your name again, so. Next item on the agenda is item 6C, resolution to authorize credit card payments for animal control.
Is that 5C or?
It's 5C on one page and 6C on another.
Okay.
So we'll call it 5C that's on the agenda.
Correct.
All right, so 5C,
Yeah.
Well, the other ones got removed, though.
Yeah.
my bad, I require like extra help on some of these notes, so.
That's what I'm looking for.
So 5C, resolution to authorize credit card payments for animal control, and Heather is still here, so she will probably speak about that as well.
With the situation of animal control's change to being under the commissioners, they lost that ability to have the bank account to collect funds on site. They cannot be a collection point without the authorization of the council. And then being able to be able to accept credit card payments, they have to have the bank account, and it's actually very beneficial for everybody if we do a PayGov account. They scan a QR code, or they can do it online, they send them the email information to pay any fines, fees, adoption fees. But we need your blessing in order to do that. Otherwise, they would have to, every time somebody wanted to adopt a dog or pay a fine, drive over, make the payment to the auditor's office, go to the treasurer's office, and then go back out to animal control.
Motion.
And I second.
We've got a motion on the floor by Ted and a second by Rob. Is there any item for discussion?
That needs to be resolution 07.
07. Do you know what the commissioner's number was?
No, I do not have that with me, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Was there any additional discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for that roll call vote, please.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Aye.
Brad Overton.
Yes.
Richard Reed.
No,
Greg Richmond.
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 6-1, and the one nay was Richard Reed. All right, next item on the agenda is 5D, additional appropriations, Commissioner, legal services, $25,000, general supplies, $624, contractual services, $12,588, other services, $4,383, postage, $793, communication, $633, fuel and pest control, $701, supplies, janitorial, $135, utilities, $3,817, and buildings, $1,791.
So I'm gonna break that apart just a little bit.
Feel free.
And start with the lower part of that list, from the general supplies through buildings. Those items, those requests are for the expenses we've had to date for animal control. When we approached the council initially, the conversation was not to actually fund any lines, but to see where we were with our spending and come back and report that to you all, and ask for an appropriation at that time. So we waited a few months, got a good list, rather than coming back every month and making that a very cumbersome conversation every month.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and walk through any of the other ones, you said you were going to start.
Well, okay, so that's general supplies, contractual services, other services, postage, communication, fuel and pest control, the janitorial, utilities, and buildings. That's all animal control-related expenses, and I have those if anybody's interested in seeing them. As for the legal services, as you know, we've had some hefty legal bills this year, and I had come to the council before with a large request, really just thinking we had $100,000 and it was gone in the first couple of months, and I was just gonna replenish that. Didn't have the bill at the time that I had to make the request to Crystal, so I did overshoot it a little bit, because what we need for this month is just a little over $15,000. But that is just to cover 1 month's invoicing outside of the retainer for Fine and Hatfield.
So is the $25,000 not accurate? It's $15,000?
Well, that's what get, 15,000 would get us through 1 month, but I'll be back next month for more, so it's whatever the council chooses to do, obviously, but, that fund we have continued to transfer into for the last couple of months out of that line we've transferred into for the last couple of months out of another line that we're depleting that we need, so all of this has made it very interesting to keep track of everything and keep everything flowing very smoothly in the office.
Would anybody object if we took the items outside of the legal services item as one item and then addressed the legal services independently?
I would agree to that.
I would support that.
Okay. So, I guess I'll make that as a motion, I'll make a motion to approve the general supplies, $624, contractual services, well, is the contractual services animal control? That was animal
Yeah.
control as well,
Yes.
okay. $12,588, postage, $793, postage, $793. Communication, $633, fuel and pest control, $701, supplies janitorial, $135, utilities, $3,817, and buildings, $1,791. And do we need to put that total there, or is that okay that I've read each of those?
It's okay.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion on the floor by myself.
I'll second.
And there's a second, if that was to approve, and then a second by Rob. I'm assuming to approve as well, Rob?
Yes,
Okay.
second to approve.
All right, so I'll open that up for discussion then. Any discussion on those items?
I'd like, what are contractual services? Can you explain that, please?
Let me,
So I'm not really familiar with the animal control situations, probably as much as I should be.
so there have been instances where we have had Midwest Telecom have to go out and do some programming for phones and those things. Hang on, I'm trying to I just have copies of the invoices. I don't actually have the claims with me. I apologize. Renewable Resources, we have a contract with them for a dumpster. We have Pet Health Services, we have a contract with them for the online system that they utilize. Hoosier Business Machines for their copier, ARAB for pest control, just
Okay.
the basic. That's just a really quick glance at these, so.
Thank you.
And so Heather, will that, will that amount, the $12,588, will that cover for the remainder of the year?
No, that's just replenishing what we've spent thus far,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
That's
any-
kind of how we had discussed doing it, is just to keep coming back and explaining
We did.
what we
Yeah, we
had
did.
spent, so that's what I did.
It's been a long
No, you're
few
fine.
months,
You're fine.
sorry. Any other discussion?
Yeah, why is there two postage, for $793? What's that for?
It was a typo, Rick.
Could you repeat that question back
Yes,
for the record?
I'm sorry. He asked why there were two postages, and initially on the agenda, I had a typo, but I have cleaned that up on the agenda that they received tonight. So there's not two postages.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading it off of the wrong list again. Okay, sorry, Rick, and everyone else. Okay, anything else? Or any other discussion? All right, let's look for that roll call vote then, please.
Ron Bacon,
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt,
Aye.
Ted Metzger,
Aye.
Brad Overton,
Yes.
Richard Reed, Greg Richmond,
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
All right, motion for those specific items carries 7-0. All right, the next item is the legal services for $25,000. Okay. All right, so do we want to, let's make them, is there a motion on the floor to open this up for discussion?
I'm motion to approve.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Greg to approve, or to at least so we can get this open to discuss. Well, it is to approve, sorry. All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
And there's a second by Ron. Now, is there any discussion about the legal services line item for $25,000?
So the legal services, and after what's happened in the last 48 hours and some emails, is this everything legit on this? Cliff, have you went over,
So,
or Mr. Whitehead, I'm sorry?
oh, yeah, it's fine. So let me kind of back up real quickly, because I know when this came up at the March meeting, there wasn't a lot of discussion. So, as you may remember, this was originally an additional appropriation for $100,000. Council, it raised questions from the council in part because what we heard was the commissioners had questions regarding these bills. And the timing. It was so early in the year, March, when you're asking for an increase like that. It kind of laid dormant for a while. I then posed some questions to the county attorney. The county attorney recently responded to those, and in my opinion, responded to them satisfactorily. And so I was comfortable with it. However, yesterday, I received an email from a commissioner that raised, in my opinion, quite a few questions regarding the basis for this additional appropriation. I was hoping the commissioner would be here tonight to explain what that meant, because it did call into question whether these legal services were for county representation or other representation. I don't have the answer to that. I don't want to make any assumptions either way, but I personally would want to hear from that commissioner to explain what was meant by this statement.
And that was what I was resuming to, so thank you.
So if I may, that when we receive the invoices from Fine and Hatfield, I go over every line that is in there. So I wouldn't I wouldn't ask Amanda to put it together, I wouldn't sign it, and I wouldn't send to the auditor's office for anything that wasn't appropriate to be built. I have sent questions to Fine and Hatfield myself, wondering why is this here and it's not retainer, and why is this? So we've adjusted things over the years, different times, but these legal services are all for county services and not any of the commissioner's personal legal fees.
And I'll just echo a little bit of what Cliff said. I mean, there has been some exchanges concerning that, and I'll be perfectly honest, after seeing their explanation, they being the Fine and Hatfield attorneys, I was perfectly willing to look at this and take it and move forward with it for what it was. But those other comments that had been made does just bring into some question, and my issue is those comments were made in writing and therefore on the record, and I would like for those comments, would have been nice if those could have been addressed on the record and in writing or some form or another, so.
And I'm not familiar with the email
Well,
or
that,
and
that
comments,
comment,
so.
that comment caused me to call a commissioner and get it clarified.
Okay.
And in my mind, it clarified that it's not, because they told me what their private attorney cost. It's not being used, none of this is being used for their private situation that they have. And they're limited on what they can say right now, too.
And I wouldn't send that claim over. Just so you know, that's.
Yeah,
I'm-
and my, like I said, I was planning prior to whatever time frame those comments were made, I was ready and willing to come in here and approve that. But my concern is that those comments were stated for the record, and I just need something in writing for the record clarifying that as well, because otherwise I feel that puts, possibly puts us, at least opens us up for the perception of questions, and I would rather just have this over and resolved once and for all. That's my comment. I don't know, I'm sorry if anybody else has got anything.
I'll add to it, that since it was first asked, whenever that was, I have talked with each of the commissioners individually, and I have directly asked each one of them if any of the fees were for their own personal expenses, and each commissioner told me no. There's nothing that is not official county business. And last night, after the email that Cliff referenced, I again called Commissioner Philippi to clarify his statement in the email, and he assured me again last night that no, there are no personal expenses in this request.
My concern is, and I believe you, but in the court of law, he said, she said, that he said, is that gonna work in clarification in this, on that email, and making it where we can feel confident and vote for that today? That's what I wanna know.
Yeah, I mean, typically in court cases, what you say somebody said is not admissible.
And that's the answer we need to have.
Well, I can say for myself that I asked him directly, he responded to me directly, and I am comfortable with his answer.
That was
That's
the same
not
with me.
hearsay.
It is hearsay.
No, he spoke to me, and in my mind, I am comfortable. I'm not relying on anyone else's opinion.
Okay.
And I can say that back to the same thing. I
Sure
mean,
you
you're
can.
saying that,
Sure you
which
can.
I'm not, I just wanna do what's right for Warrick County. And until we are addressed from that source, I do not think we need to do anything like that. Which I trust you. I mean, you said that and that's fine, but he needs to be here today to let us know that.
So, Cliff, when you looked at everything looked like that it was outside of the retainer.
Well, I looked at retainer and inside and outside the retainer.
Okay. And you know that it takes money to defend, as, for example, if we would get sued for something that we did that was our job to do, that we had the right to do, then his retainer does not include defending us in court. That's extra and outside of our normal duties here in advising us. So I just feel like that we're kind of obligated for this.
And I do know that the commissioners are looking at the avenues to try to recoup some of those funds, be it insurance or other, they're working with our insurance providers and trying to get things taken care of in hopes that we can recoup some of those funds and not.
I'm not disregarding we need to pay,
No, I understand. I
but
just
after
wanna
that
say-
email we had yesterday, that just, has red flags all over it. I mean, that just makes me want to sit back and scratch my head. I was ready, we've had no discussion if that email wouldn't have happened yesterday. It'd have been,
Yeah, and I'm not
You've
familiar
had-
with the email, so
Yes.
I don't know what's on it.
and I think every one of us up here are.
Yeah.
And until that is discussed, that's the only
Did
thing.
anybody else call Commissioner Philippi?
Here's my thing,
Did it?
that was in writing, and I am not going to take what somebody responds to me verbally back to something that's in writing. If that was in writing, basically stating, perhaps I, whatever, misspoke, just for clarification purposes, but for me to vote for that after he stated that, and then I've got to go out and justify my vote to someone else, and they say, well, oh yeah, he just told you that, and I'm like, I struggle with justifying.
In the email, did he state that
You
this
know,
was gonna cover his private?
you know exactly how that email was stated, and that email was referencing certain activities, and I just, it should have been clarified. Honestly, that email, if it would have never been sent, I would have walked in here tonight and I would have proved that. I'm not telling you that as a falsehood, making a false statement. But if that would have been clarified, but I can't go and justify to somebody else that, oh yeah, well, you know, so-and-so told me this. Well, do you have that in writing? I mean, unfortunately, you know, having additional conversations with the attorney, you know, you start to realize that things need to be in writing and you need to have clarification, and it needs to be out so you can refer to that and reference the same thing. I mean, you know, we need to know what those things are, and it needs to be stated clearly. And, I mean, that's my thoughts.
In the bill that you prepared and asking for this additional appropriation, are there any expenses that are personal for the commissioners?
No, they're not.
And what amount would cover your request? Because you said there was extra in here,
Yeah, about 15,500.
15,000. And of that 15,000, is there anything personal for the commissioners?
No, there's not.
Should we approve the 15,000, since we know from the administrator that it is all,
Well, there's already on the motion on the floor to approve the $25,000.
I would be glad to amend it. What's the proper procedure for changing?
Just a minute.
It's your motion, so.
It's your motion, just a
Yeah, it's your
minute.
motion.
Okay, well, I would amend my motion to the $15,000 instead of 25 then.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Greg to change the dollar amount from $25,000 to $15,000. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And there's a second on the floor by Chris. Any discussion?
Can I make a motion?
Rick, there's already a motion on the floor and a second, so I think we'd have to,
I'd like to table it.
well, we'll have to address,
We
Rick,
have to vote on the motion, Rick, and then,
I don't understand.
yeah.
So again, even we moved it to that, Mr. Whitehead, you're giving the same advice, or no?
I mean, again,
I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't.
yeah, I mean, I've stated, you know, what I've said.
Yes.
I was fine with
Okay.
what I read. That email raised a lot of questions. Sounds like Mr. Philippi was aware that there were questions. He's not here tonight. You know, I assume he knew there'd be questions and he's not here tonight. I would want confirmation from him because it is hearsay, with all due respect.
Did you see the invoices for the 15,000?
There aren't invoices for 15,000. The 15,000 additional appropriation, that is a hodgepodge of various claims that have been submitted. And some of those have been paid by transfers from other line items. Is that correct?
No, this request is to cover the current bill that I have on my desk, which is
What-
approximately 15,000, and
And
have not
I've been through
submitted
many of them, which.
But we have not seen those.
you've not seen
Oh,
those,
then I
no.
haven't even seen that one.
No.
So so then the answer is, whoever asked it, no, I cannot vouch for this bill, because I haven't seen this bill.
Okay.
And so I don't, and Mr. Phillippi's email didn't clarify if he's talking about this bill, other bills. So, again, that's why I just raised a lot of questions. I'm not stating whether you should or should not approve anything. I'm just stating, what I said is it raised a lot of questions.
Thank you.
I want to comment also that I did contact Mr. Philippi this afternoon and ask him after that to please be here. And he said he could not. And I asked him if his attorneys could be here, and he said he would send a message to them to ask them to be here. That was the comment that I got back, so they are not here also. So,
Any additional discussion? And I'll take a call for a roll call vote then, please.
Ron Bacon,
no,
Rob Dimmitt,
No.
Ted Metzger,
Nay.
Brad Overton,
No.
Richard Reed,
No.
Greg Richmond,
Yes,
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
The motion fails, 2 to 5. Nays were Ted Metzger, Brad Overton, Rob Dimmitt, Ron Bacon, and Rick Reed.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And I believe, did Rick want to make a motion?
Yeah, Rick, did you want to make another motion now?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to table until we get all the data.
Table
No.
it's not necessary.
No. She'll probably just re-advertise something for next month. So-
Because there was a motion and it failed, you can't table the agenda, and
Yeah.
and if it's
Oh.
the same motion, then the person who, or one of the individuals who brought, or who said no to it, would have to bring the same motion next time if they want to. So,
Okay, next item on the agenda is 6A, additional appropriation reduction, correction to GO bond payments, $747,122, appropriation to GO bond, I should have read reduction GO bond courthouse payments, $747,122, appropriation GO bond 2023 payments, $747,729.
You can take all of these if you want, because it's under the consent agenda.
Oh, sorry. Okay, next item on the agenda is salary ordinance, sheriff. It's a payout, $1,968. Transfer EMA from copy paper, $100. First aid, $100. Travel expense, $200.
that's two travel expense.
Oh, I'm sorry.
100 from, 100
Transfer
from.
from copy paper and from first aid, $100 each to travel expense, thank you. Salary ordinance clerk, resignation payout deputy, $4,178.93. And I believe those are the items under the handbook reimbursements, is that correct? Or is that
Yes.
other item? Okay.
Correct. And the one is just a bookkeeping clarification and the other's handbook.
Okay. Looking for,
Motion to approve.
all right, motion on the floor by Ron, is there a second?
I'll second.
A second on the floor by Rob. Any discussion? Not seeing any discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Aye.
Brad Overton.
Yes.
Richard Reed.
Yes.
Greg Richmond.
Yes,
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, additional appropriations, sheriff, other services, $50,000.
Sheriff Mike Wilder. I think I had a chance to speak with everyone. I think everyone's kind of aware what this is and what we're working with Cliff and Andrew to get this settled out, so.
motion approved.
I second.
A motion on the floor by Greg and a second by Rob. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Aye.
Brad Overton.
Yes.
Richard Reed.
No.
Greg Richmond.
Yes,
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1. The one nay is Richard Reed. All right, next item, under council business, 8A, reduction to appropriation, jail savings fund correction. Looks like a reduction of $900,000 from contractual services.
Go ahead and read 8B and 8C because it's all related.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, additional appropriation, is 8B, public safety contractual services correctional facility, $900,000.
And then 8C, the transfer of the cash.
And then 8C is also related, jail savings fund, $3,272,338.72. Transfer cash from jail savings fund, $49.40 to public safety lit, $11.70.
Okay, so it was brought to our attention that the commissioners did not have the authority to establish the jail savings fund. So therefore, you know how they established that fund and then we were putting money from public safety into the jail savings fund to save for the jail. So we just need to transfer the cash that we put into the jail savings fund back to public safety and pay all bills from public safety. Hence the budget reduction and appropriation also. So it's cleaning it up.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion on the floor by Ron for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second on the floor by Rob. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, or hearing no discussion, I make a call for a roll call vote.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Aye.
Brad Overton.
Yes.
Richard Reed.
Yes.
Greg Richmond.
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Other business?
I have a transfer to
You have
add.
a transfer to add? Okay.
I laid it on your desk, referring to the pettit jury. It's a transfer from, what is 0201? What is it, Superior 1 or 2? Well, I'm gonna read the numbers because I can't remember if it's 1 or 2. 1000.31890.000.0201 to 1000.18320.000.0201, and it's from pauper documents to pettit jury. And you need a dollar amount. Give me a second. $4,000.
$4,000.
4,000 even?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And just to clarify, it was Superior 1.
All right, should I read those line items again, or were those already?
No, sure.
No, you're
Okay,
fine.
all right.
I make a motion to approve.
A motion on the floor by Rob to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Ron. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimmitt.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Aye.
Brad Overton.
Yes.
Richard Reed.
Aye.
Greg Richmond.
Yes.
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is 9.
No,
No, is that the,
that's the old agenda item.
okay. So I don't see anything on this one. Is
The grant procedures.
Are we doing the
Grant
the
procedure.
joint resolution
Yeah.
establishing? So is that 8E then?
I don't know what it is, but.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is joint resolution establishing grant procedures. And we've all received a copy of that draft. I believe Cliff, you and others had worked with that to come up with some policies and procedures to guide us in the distribution and handling of grants. Does that kind of sum that up?
It
roughly?
does, yeah. Debbie Bennett Steers was very integral in that, worked with the county attorney. He made some tweaks. The commissioners, my understanding, passed this last Tuesday, so I believe it should be approved.
Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Ron. Is there a second?
I'll second.
No, 08. Okay, thank you. And there's a second on the floor by, or a second by Rob.
And just make sure everybody's on the same page as far as it's the one that that the commissioners passed that was different than the original one that I sent out, I think.
Right.
Okay, great, okay.
Any discussion? Yes, you may.
Debbie Stevens, Warrick County Auditor. So I'm, you know the resolution, but the public does not know the resolution. We don't know what it says or what it's doing, but there was a comment earlier in the meeting that the council and the commissioners are changing the role of the auditor, which is a statutory office, and part of their responsibility is compliance to grants and contracts. The auditor's responsibilities are to vet claims that come to their office for payment, and part of that is to pull that contract out and make sure that it's being paid according to the contract, or to pull the grant out and make sure that the terms and the conditions of the grant are being, followed by a claim that's been submitted. So it's a statutory constitutional office of the state of Indiana, and we don't know what you're voting on. Is this a vote to change
No,
a
Debbie,
duty?
no,
Maybe
it is a
maybe it would
general.
help to read
And
the
I can-
resolution
I
or what
can-
you're voting on here.
Yeah, I can speak on that. First,
Okay,
it was
thank you.
passed by the commissioners, so it's already been before the public one time. We'd be happy to share a copy with anybody, including you. It does not affect anybody's statutory duties, including the auditor. And actually, there are already grant procedures codified by the Warrick County in ordinance 39.12. So it just reaffirms most of those that are already in place.
Okay.
So, but most importantly, to your comment, it does not affect any individual, including the auditor's statutory duties.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, because they have written ordinances that are illegal and trying to circumvent or go further than the law allows when it concerns the auditor's duties. And that would be, I believe it was 2021-28. It's still, they can't enforce it. They would have to in a court of law, but it's, as far as I know, still on the record. So I'm just saying to this board, the public depends on you to do your job. And you don't work for the commissioners, you work for us. And when millions and millions of dollars are just handed over in lump sum appropriations for then the commissioners to just spend unvetted by this board, the Fiscal Oversight Board, for the county residents, we lose our line of defense when it comes to spending in the county. And this board has done that. And, there becomes this attitude of they'll get whatever they want and they'll spend and they'll give it to whoever they want. And so I'm just asking you all to work for the taxpayers. And I don't, you'll vet $25,000, but then you'll appropriate $6 million onto an expenditure line unvetted by this board to be spent in Warrick County. And it happened. And you can, Rob, you weren't here, you might have voted for the second round, the second $6 million, but 4 of you at least voted for the $12.2 million in ARPA funds to be put into an expense line for commissioners to spend, unvetted publicly by this board. So, just asking you to do your jobs, please.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have some good news.
That would be great.
State of Indiana Department of Local Government Finance supplemental local income tax distributions. The public safety distribution for Warrick County, this is the county share, $2,035,767. And then the economic development distribution, $1,991,918. So that's some good news. And
I'm so sorry. Did you guys vote on this
No,
yet?
no, we're
Okay,
still on
so I think we're a little afar
sorry.
from the,
Since she was
I
up,
think you
I
just
got-
deviated.
I'm sorry, I got sidetracked.
We had the motion on
We've got a
the
motion
table.
on the floor by Ron and a second by Rob to approve resolution, was it 08?
08.
08.
Correct. And a roll call vote, please.
Ron Bacon.
Aye.
Rob Dimick.
Aye.
Ted Metzger.
Nay.
Brad Overton.
Yes.
Richard Reed.
No.
Greg Richmond.
Yes,
Chris Wetstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2. Those voting against were Ted Metzger and Richard Reed. Any council member have anything additional outside of?
I wish somebody else would go along to the Indiana County Council Association Summer Conference. It's in Indianapolis, June 21 and 22. And during our budget session, we'll probably be dealing with the ruling by the U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division. We had this come out before for some of us that were on this board, where they've raised the exempt level. That's all.
Anyone else? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have any other visitors or?
No, there's not. There's a motion by Ted to adjourn, and is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
All right, second by Rob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Rick, we'll take that 6-0-1.
Bye, Rick.